Is this 16-inch MacBook Pro with the M1 Pro chip still worth it in 2026? Now, I am switching very soon to an M5 Max. I placed like my order 1 hour ago and I can't wait. But realistically, as a farewell, I want to say this laptop is still bloody brilliant in 2026. And if I wasn't doing some new things that I'm trying to do and learn and embrace, I wouldn't have ordered the M5 Max because there just wouldn't really be a need. This thing still absolutely tears through a lot of my work in the big 2026. And if it is powerful enough for your workflow, I am strongly convinced that there is very little options out there that is as good of a value as a used M1 MacBook Pro or a M2 MacBook Pro. And here's why. First and foremost, let's run through the specs that I have. Okay, 16-inch, 1TB SSD and 16 gigs of RAM. Now, I personally would recommend if you do get the M1 or M2 chips, get the 1TB SSD version because the 1TB SSD is quite a bit faster than the 500 gig SSD versions of that time. I think they only fixed it with the M3 onwards, where the 500 gig SSD was as fast as the 1TB, but it was a notable difference enough that I paid the extra to get 1TB. And I absolutely do not regret it. And if you have the budget, stretch and try to go for a 1TB model if you can find it. This one has the higher core count GPU, but it's not really much of a difference to the normal M1 Pro. But nevertheless, this thing is quite beastly. For video editing and photo editing, which is kind of like the main things I do, this thing is still absolutely phenomenal. I have no problems with it. Editing FX3 footage, Sony 4K H.265, which is probably the most common format for video editing right now, because that's like the most common camera. No problem. Smooth, seamless, even with color grades. With basic effects, it's fine. It only starts chugging along and slowing down when you throw very GPU heavy effects on there, like intense grain, intense kind of like 3D modeling stuff, or when you throw AI kind of accelerated effects, like relight in DaVinci Resolve Edit. Hopefully the M5 Max fixes that when I get it, because that has a ton more performance and it has AI cores for accelerating those processes. But if you're just video editing, like basic video editing with color grading, and a lot of people only do that much because they're just making YouTube videos or they're just doing more like basic corporate stuff that doesn't really need crazy VFX and stuff. This laptop is gonna do really, really fine. And the cool thing about the M1 Pro chip and all M chips is that you can do that without plugging in your laptop. You will have no performance hit even if it's unplugged. So you can do your work anywhere, which really, really helps if you are working on the go or you're trying to make a living using your laptop, which is essential. As for other things that I've done on this laptop, I've tried doing a little bit of VS Code, a bit of website programming and learning some basics on it. And so far, it's been pretty good. Running GPT codecs, obviously codecs is like cloud-based, but having it run in the background and all that stuff, developing stuff for me so I can learn to vibe code, whatever you feel about vibe coding, I'm just trying to learn it, has been pretty smooth and pretty effortless. I do feel that the 16 gigs of RAM that was available on this has severely limited me. So my M5 Max is gonna have 128 gigs of RAM because I wanna get all the RAM I can before it gets way too unaffordable. But this thing just handles really anything I throw at it like a champ. Even Fusion 3D CADing, I have had very little issues. And even using Rhino to do subsurface modeling has been pretty alright until it gets overly complicated. It actually handles no problem. So this thing is a beast, and its performance is so good, and you don't have to plug it in. Plus, its pricing is insane because everyone and their grandmother's dog bought a M1 MacBook Pro or an M2 MacBook Pro when it came out. And many are still using today or only just starting to upgrade like me. And so there's a ton of them on the used market for very good prices. A spec like this probably costs about 1.5, 1.6K Singapore dollars, which isn't very cheap for a 4-year-old laptop. But compared to a lot of 1.6K laptops you can get secondhand on the Windows side of things, this thing outperforms them on many fronts, especially in the creative workloads that Apple is particularly known for. Music production, video editing, photo editing, and 3D modeling. Only 3D modeling, like does the Mac lose out to the Windows alternatives, but if you are a creative first and foremost on the previous aforementioned genres, the MacBook is just the better option. Also, keep in mind that for the price that you can get this at, you get industry-leading, beautiful mini LED display, which looks stunning, is very color accurate for color grading. It's still my reference monitor till this date. Very sharp, very beautiful, and 120 Hz, which more than enough. Yeah, I mean, you can't game on it, but it's a Mac. You're not buying it to game. You get top of the class trackpad, huge glass piece, very precise, amazing to use, and you get a very solid keyboard as well as still some of the best speakers on laptops around. They're front-facing, they're boomy, they're bassy, they sound great, they're just amazing. Not to mention good I/O, good SD card reader, USB-C, HDMI, and it still has a headphone jack, which is great. The webcam is pretty shit on this, but let's be honest, Windows laptops don't have better webcams unless you're paying a lot of extra money anyways. There is one thing to note though, if you're buying one of these second-hand, please check if the SD card reader is working, because these things break very, very easily, especially on the earlier M1, M2 models. So if you're buying this second-hand, I strongly recommend bringing an SD card along to check before anything else. It's also really quiet. The fans basically never whir up. The only time the fans on my laptop whir up is when I'm doing a crazy render and I put this on, my bed, with the sheets basically blocking airflow. If you put it on a hard surface or a laptop stand, it basically never really spins up all that much, and it generally stays quite cool, quite chill, which is awesome. So TLDR, so a quick recap on what we've just non-stop yapped about, because I might have gone off tangent there, I don't know. If you're doing creative workloads like video editing, photo editing, music work, the stuff that Apple's traditionally famously good at, the M1 Pro is still worth it in 2026. It still chugs along for a lot of purposes, unless you start getting heavy onto the AI or heavily GPU accelerated fronts. And even then, you can just get like the M2 Pro or the M3 Pro, which has significantly better GPU performance. If you are someone that needs, to do CADing, 3D modeling, then getting something with an NVIDIA GPU and a powerful Intel or AMD Ryzen CPU might be better. But while this loses out in terms of raw performance to those laptops, this will always have the advantage that you could run those softwares without a massive performance hit, without being plugged in, without having a charger plugged in, which means, you can do your work anywhere. Oh, and I forgot to mention that this thing has battery health of 86% after 4 years of use, which is A, really impressive, and B, really impressive because I've really abused it, and C, it still lasts me a full day of use if I'm just typing documents and watching YouTube videos, and it lasts 4 hours on heavy video editing with regards to 6K RAW. So if it's that good, you might be asking me, hey, why am I upgrading to an M5 Max MacBook Pro? If you know me, that's what you will ask. And the reason is simple. I've been learning to use AI more. As much as I don't like AI in arts and stuff, it is an inevitable thing. It is quite inevitable, and I want to be on the forefront. I want to be ready for the future. Also, the M5 Max will allow me to do a lot more of the GPU intense things like learning to do Blender, doing renders on like Keyshot or Unreal Engine, as well as obviously the aforementioned AI stuff. And if you're wondering what M5 Max I'm getting, well, subscribe, because there will be a video on that once I get using it. But it will be 128 gigs of VRAM and basically maxed out on every single front except for the SSD. Subscribe for more honest, raw reviews. Bye-bye.